Welcome to next session on analysis of bars. Today I will discuss numericals which deal with bars having varying cross section as well as a bar whose one of node is able to move, and which means that there is some degree of freedom for movement for one of the nodes of the bar. So we'll consider these two problems in this session. We'll begin with the first problem, which deals with the varying cross section. The numericals that we have solved till now deals with only bars with uniform cross section or stepped bars wherein each step of the bar had a cross section which was uniform. So the problem statement says determine the nodal displacement, stress in each element and reaction at the fixed support for the thin plate of uniform thickness of 1 mm as shown in figure. Take Young's modulus E equals 200 GPa, weight density of the plate rho equals 76.6 into 10 to the power of minus 6 Newton per millimeter cube. In addition to its weight, it is subjected to a point load of 100 Newton at its midpoint. Model the plate with the 2 bar elements. At the problem, we can see that the cross-sectional area is tapering with the maximum width on the left side, which is the fixed end, being 60 mm, and the minimum width of the tapered bar being 30 mm on the right side. The 100 Newton force which is acting, it is exactly at the midpoint. So the total length of the tapered bar is 240 mm, and at 120 mm from the fixed end, a force of 100 Newton is acting on the axial line. Now the density is also given, which is quite different than what the problems we have solved till now. The problems till now we have taken only point loads, we have not dealt with body forces or traction forces, but this problem has the data given, density is given, which means that we need to consider even the body force of the given bar. So before we model the finite element analysis, we need to make small modifications to the given bar. Finite element model, we have seen that we consider 2 elements and the area for the entire element is assumed to be uniform. In order to do that, this particular tapering bar, the bar with varying cross section, we will convert this into a stepped bar wherein the left side will have the width of 60 mm, on the right side it will have a 30 mm width. So how do we calculate the width at the mid node, which is the node 2, the node at midpoint where 100 Newton force is acting? In order to calculate that, we'll make the average of width on the left side and the right side. On the left side we have the maximum width, on the right side we have the minimum width. So we'll assume that at the midpoint it is the average of these two widths that exist, assuming that the tapering is uniform. So once we have done that, we can easily formulate the finite element model. So the finite element model is simple. It is more closely associated to the finite element model of a stepped bar what we have formulated in the previous numericals. So node 1, node 2 and node 3, Q1, Q2, Q3 denoting the displacements at node 1, node 2 and node 3. Element 1, the number with a circle around it. Element 2 is denoted by the number 2 with a circle around it. L1 and L2 are the lengths of element 1 and 2. Now, what is the width at node 2? We don't know. 60 mm is the width at node 1. At node 3, the width is 30 mm. So what will be the width at the node 2, which is the midpoint? As I told you before, we'll calculate the average of width at node 1 and node 3. So width at node 2 is given by 60 plus 30 divided by 2, which is equal to 45 mm. So now we know what is the width at the node 2. But we also need to understand what is the average area of the element 1 and average area of element 2. So in order to do that, we'll calculate the average width of element 1 multiplied by the thickness. Since we are considering only cross sectional area and the thickness is given as unit thickness or 1 mm thickness in the question itself. So we'll calculate the average width of element 1 and then we'll multiply it with the thickness. So average width of element 1. For element 1 at node 1 the width is 60 mm. At node 2 we have just calculated it is 45 mm. So average of 60 and 45 mm will be the average width of element 1, which is given by 52.5 multiplied by 1 mm thickness, which will give you the average or the area of element 1 will be obtained as 52.5 millimeter square. Now we'll also calculate the area of element 2 by calculating the average width of element 2. So at node 2 width is 45 mm, at node 3 width is 30 mm. So average width of 45 mm and 30 mm will be 45 plus 30 divided by 2, which is equal to 37.5, and then multiply this with the thickness, unit thickness. So 1 mm thickness, 37.5 into 1 mm, which will give you the area 37.5 millimeter square. Next we need to calculate the stiffness matrix going by the steps that we have discussed in the very first session. The element matrix of element 1 is given by small k suffix 1 A1 E1 by L1. So A1 we have determined, E1 it has been given in the question 200 GPa, which will write it as 2 into 10 to the power of 5. L1 is 120 mm multiplied by the matrix 1 minus 1 minus 1 and 1. So 52.5 into 2 into 10 to the power of 5 divided by length, which is equal to 120, 1 minus 1 minus 1 and 1. This will give you the numerical value in terms of 10 to the power of 6 or sometimes even 5. But to make matter simple, so that the global stiffness matrix can be easily obtained by adding the elemental stiffness matrices, I'll try to keep 10 power 5 as a common term. So I will remove 10 power 5 from the value that I have just obtained and multiply the remaining value into the matrix. So 0.875 minus 0.875 minus 0.875 and 0.875. So this is the elemental stiffness matrix for element 1. Now we'll calculate the stiffness matrix for element 2. So for element 2, K2 equals A2E2 by L2, 1 minus 1 minus 1 and 1. Since the area is now different, we'll take the value of elemental area 2, which is given by 37.5 millimeter square, which I have just obtained by calculating the average width over the element 2 and multiplying this with the elastic modulus E, which is same. Since it is one complete bar made of a single material, we don't have to change the value of E. So E remains 2 into 10 to the power of 5 divided by, since the node 2 is present exactly at the middle, then the length of element 1 and 2 are same. So L2 is also equal to 120 multiplied by 1 minus 1 minus 1 and 1. So the value that you obtain by multiplying 37.5 into 2 into 10 to the power of 5 divided by 120, we will try to keep 10 to the power of 5 common or separate and then multiply the remaining terms inside the bracket. Why do we do this? Because when we add the elemental matrices to obtain the global stiffness matrix, when we keep 10 to the power of 5 separate, we can add the remaining terms inside the matrix to obtain the global stiffness matrix. So the remaining term after taking 10 to the power of 5 common is 0.625. So 10 to the power of 5 into if I multiply this 0.625 into the 1 minus 1 minus 1 1 matrix, then I will obtain 10 to the power of 5 multiplied by a matrix 0.625 minus 0.625 minus 0.625 and 0.625. So this is the elemental stiffness matrices. Since there are only two elements, so we'll not further calculate any elemental matrices. With the elemental matrices now determined, we will obtain the global stiffness matrix. So global stiffness matrix is obtained by adding the different elemental matrices. So what are the different elemental matrices? We have K1 and K2 corresponding to the element 1 and element 2. So K is the summation of K1 plus K2, and I have denoted the global degrees of freedom. For element 1 there are two nodes, node 1 and node 2. So the degrees of freedom for node 1 and node 2 I have denoted by the red color numbering 1 2 1 2. So for element 2, the stiffness in the stiffness matrix, the degrees of freedom are calculated for node 2 and 3. So node 2, node 3, node 2 and node 3 I have mentioned it in the stiffness matrix. Now for the global stiffness matrix, since we have 3 nodes, the stiffness matrix will be of 3 cross 3 matrix. The element at 1 1, meaning that at position of the element which is on the first column and first row is obtained by the first column first row element in the stiffness matrix of element 1, which is 0.875. Similarly, for the element at column 2 and row 1, it is minus 0.875. All this we have discussed in the previous numericals. We'll write directly 0.875 minus 0.875. Since there are no elements for the third column first row, we'll take it to be 0. Then first column second row minus 0.875. Second column second row, there are two elements present. One element in the stiffness matrix of element 1 and the other element is stiffness matrix of element 2. So 0.875 plus 0.625 will give us 1.5 in the position second column and second row. So minus 0.625 is the element in third column second row, which is obtained from the elemental matrix of second element. And further, in the first column third row there are no elements, hence it is taken to be 0. And second column third row it is minus 0.625, and third column third row it is 0.625. So we have the global stiffness matrix now. So once we have the global stiffness matrix, we'll try to formulate the global nodal displacement vector. So global nodal displacement vector is given by capital Q is equal to Q1, Q2 and Q3 corresponding to displacements at node 1, node 2 and node 3. Now we'll formulate the global load vector. The global load vector, since this is a problem which contains the body force, we need to calculate the body force vector first and then add this body force vector to all the different nodal forces that are present, nodal point forces to be particular. So how do you calculate the body force? It is given by the formula F suffix E equals AELE FE by 2, where FE you can also take it to be rho E, where A denotes the cross sectional area, L denotes the length and rho denotes the density of the element small e, divided by 2 multiplied by the vector 1 1. So for this we'll calculate what will be the body force at element 1. So at element 1, F1 equals A1 L1 rho 1 by 2 will give you 1 1 into vector. So 52.5 is the area, 52.5 millimeter square. L1 is 120 mm. 76.6 into 10 to the power of minus 6 Newton per millimeter cube is the density, weight density at element 1. So divided by 2 into 1 and 1. Now the value that you get 0.241, we directly multiply it into the vector 1 1 to obtain 0.241 and 0.241. Since we are calculating the global, since we want to calculate the global force vector later, will denote the nodal locations as well for the vector. So 1 and 2 denoted by the Reading pen will give you the nodal locations of 0.241 and nodal location of 2, which is also 0.241. Now similarly we will also calculate the body force vector for element 2. For element 2, F2 is given by A2L2 into F2 by 2, 1 and 1. So 37.5 into 120 into 76.6 into 10 to the power of minus 6 divided by 2, which will give you a value of 0.1723. Now multiplying this into the vector 1, 1, I'll obtain a vector which is 0.1723 and 0.1723. But I will denote the nodal positions as well with respect to the global, so that I can easily add. So at second node it is 0.1723, at third node it is 0.1723. Now I will formulate the global force or load vector. So global force vector F is given by F1, F2 and F3. F1 is the force acting at node 1, F2 is the force acting at node 2, F3 is the force acting at node 3. So what is F1? Since there is no point load acting at node 1, only the body force at node 1 will be considered. So body force at node 1 is given by 0.241, which we have just calculated. So I'll write only 0.241. Now body force plus there is a point load which is acting at node 2. So at node 2, the node 2 which is common to both element 1 and element 2 will receive the body force from both element 1 and element 2 and also the force from point load. So 0.241 plus 0.1723 plus the 100 point load will be added. So 0.241 Newton plus 0.1723 Newton plus 100 Newtons will give you 100.4133 Newton. But at node 3 there is no point load acting, it is only the body force which will be considered. So it is 0.1723 which will be taken. Now we have the global stiffness matrix, the global load vector, also the global nodal displacement vector. With all these three we can formulate the equilibrium condition. So what is equilibrium condition? It is given by K into Q equals F, as we have solved in the previous problems. Substituting K matrix, the Q vector and F vector, and taking the, or once we have substituted, we need to apply the boundary conditions, and from the boundary conditions we can either take the elimination approach or the penalty approach. We'll apply the boundary condition and take the elimination approach. So what is the boundary condition given? Q1 is 0, meaning that node 1 is fixed. There is no displacement at node 1. So Q1 becomes 0, and with that, when we take the elimination approach, we will eliminate the row corresponding to Q1 in the equilibrium equation, and also the first, since Q1 is present in the first row, we will also eliminate the first column in global stiffness matrix. So once we do that, 10 to the power of 5 into 1.5 minus 0.625 minus 0.625 and 0.625 is the global stiffness matrix that remains. Q2, Q3 is the displacement vector that remains. 100.4133 and 0.1723 is the force vector that remains. Now we can easily simplify and obtain the values of Q2 and Q3. How do we simplify this and obtain the value? We have discussed in the very first problem. So if you are not aware of it, you can go back to the previous videos and then obtain. On simplification, we obtain the Q2 value as 1.149 into 10 to the power of minus 3 millimeters. Q3 value as 1.152 into 10 to the power of minus 3 millimeter. The nodal displacement vector is now given by Q equals 0, 1.149 into 10 to the power of minus 3, 1.152 into 10 to the power of minus 3. Q1, since we know it is 0, Q2 and Q3 we are just calculated. With the Q value that we have obtained, we can calculate the stress. Stress, again the same formula holds good. E1 by E by L minus 1 1 Q I and Q I plus 1, where I denotes the node numbering. So for element 1, sigma 1 is given by E value is 2 into 10 to the power of 5, L value is 120, minus 1 and 1, Q1 is 0, Q1 plus 1, which is Q2, is 1.149 into 10 power minus 3, which is equal to 1.915 megapascal. Now for element 2, sigma 2 is given by 2 into 10 to the power of 5 divided by 120 minus 1 and 1. Q2 is 1.149 into 10 power minus 3. Q2 plus 1, which is Q3, displacement at node 3 is 1.152 into 10 power minus 3, which will result in 0.005 megapascal. So once you have calculated the stresses, we can calculate the reactions at support by the formula R equals K into Q minus F, where K is the global stiffness matrix, Q is the global displacement vector that we have calculated now. We know the values. F value is already known. So substituting all this and simplifying, you will obtain R1 value as minus 100.568. R2 is almost 0, so we can take it to be 0. R3 also to be 0. So R1, R2 and R3 we can easily obtain, where R1 will be 100.5 minus 100.568. So this completes the required solutions for the varying cross-sectional bar. In the next problem, we'll take up the bars with one of the nodes having freedom of movement or one of the node having a certain displacement possible. So taking the next problem, consider the bar as shown. An axial load P, which is equal to 60 kilonewton, is applied at the midpoint. The question says use elimination method and penalty method of handling the boundary conditions to determine the nodal displacement and support reactions. Generally, in your examination, they don't ask you to calculate both elimination method and penalty approach method, but the probability of asking any one of the two methods is more. But since this is a very different type of problem, we'll try to solve from both the approaches. The value of A is given as 250 millimeter square. It is an uniform cross-sectional area bar. E value is 200 GPa. If you observe, the bar has a freedom of 0.12 millimeter to expand. The left hand side is fixed, but on the right side it has a freedom of 0.12 millimeter displacement. 60 kilonewton is acting exactly at the midpoint if you observe in the figure. 150 millimeters and 150 millimeter. So total length is 300 mm, of which 150 mm is the location where the 60 kilonewton force is acting axially. Now with this data, we will first formulate the finite element model as we had been doing for uniform cross-sectional bar or step bars till now. So we'll divide the given bar into two elements. The first element from the fixed node to the location where the applied load of 60 kilonewton is acting, and then the second element will begin from the point of application of load to the free end of the bar. So 1, 2 and 3 are the nodes. Q1, Q2, Q3 are the displacements at the given nodes. So L1 is the length of element 1, L2 is the length of element 2. 0.12 mm is the displacement that is possible for node 3. We'll find the element stiffness matrix. So element stiffness matrix, it is given by A1 E1 by L1, 1 minus 1 minus 1 and 1. So 250 into 10 to the power of 250 into 2 into 10 to the power of 5 divided by 150, 1 minus 1 minus 1 and 1. So 10 to the power of 5 multiplied by the matrix. As I told you, we'll try to keep 10 to the power of 5 common, so that the remaining term 3.33 is multiplied inside the matrix 1 minus 1 minus 1 and 1. We'll obtain the value 10 power 5 into 3.33 minus 3.33 minus 3.33 and 3.33. Now we'll calculate the stiffness matrix for element 2. So element 2 also has the same area, the same value of E and also same value of L. So we'll obtain the same stiffness matrix or the matrix with the same values. but the global degrees of freedom are marked. For element 1, the two nodes that are present are 1 2 and 1 2, so those has been marked. And for element 2, the nodes present are node 2, node 3, so those two nodes are also marked. Why do we do this? It will help us to easily formulate the global stiffness matrix. So global stiffness matrix is given by K equals K1 plus K2. So taking phi to be the common term, we'll add the elements that are present inside the K1 and K2. So at first column, first row, the element present is 3.33, which we will write. Next, for second column, first row, the element present is minus 3.33. Minus 3.33 we will denote. For the third column, first row, there is no element, hence we will take it to be 0. Next, for first column, second row, the element present is minus 3.33. We will write minus 3.33. For second column, second row, there are two elements present. One element from the element stiffness matrix of element 1 and the other from the element 2 stiffness matrix. So 3.33 plus 3.33 will give us 6.66. Next, for third column, second row, it is minus 3.33, which we have written. For first column, third row, there is no element, hence it is 0. Second column, third row, minus 3.33, so minus 3.33 we will write. Third column, third row, it is 3.33, hence 3.33 will be written. So this completes the formulation of global stiffness matrix. With the global stiffness matrix known, we will try to formulate the global nodal displacement vector. Global nodal displacement vector is given by Q1, Q2 and Q3, where Q1 corresponds to displacement at node 1, Q2 corresponds to displacement at node 2, Q3 corresponds to displacement at node 3. Now we will also formulate the global force vector, which is given by F1, F2 and F3. So with these three, the equilibrium condition K into Q equals F can be formulated. But there is a catch here. If you observe the diagram, the node 3, which has a freedom of movement, it will receive some amount of force which is present at node 2 as part of its displacement. Hence, F, the global force vector, will not remain the same. The further solution, as I told you before, it could be either obtained by taking the elimination method or the penalty approach method. In the examination, asking both the methods to solve for a single problem is highly unlikely, but any one of the methods from these two can be asked. Particularly for this problem, there are chances that either of the methods can be asked. Hence, we will obtain the solution by both the methods. You will also see that there is a small change in the values that you obtain by both the methods. So we will take up the elimination method first. So since node 3 has a maximum displacement of 0.12 mm, as I told you before, the force acting at node 3 will not be equal to 0. If it was a fixed support at node 3, then the force at node 3 will be 0. Only reaction force would have been present. But now since node 3 has some amount of freedom to move, the force at node 3 will be a partial amount from the force which is present at node 2. So global force vector will become, by taking the value A3. So what is A3? We call it as spring displacement, but it is equal to the displacement at node 3, which is Q3. So A3 is equal to Q3, which is equal to 0.12 mm. So we will consider F1 minus K13, which is the stiffness at node 3 because of the force at node 1, K23, and will multiply F1 minus K13 A3 and F2 minus K23 A3 and F3 minus K33 A3. So We will obtain the equilibrium equation also in terms of the force vector that we just formulated. The global stiffness matrix remains the same, the global displacement vector remains the same, but since node 3 is free to move, the force acting at node 3 will be different than 0. Hence we will consider the modified global force vector. With this we apply the elimination method. So we know the boundary condition. What are the boundary conditions that we know? The boundary condition at q1 is 0, node 1 is 0, it is fixed. At node 3 it is 0.12 mm. So both q1 and q3 are known boundary conditions. So with the known boundary conditions, we eliminate the corresponding rows and columns in the equilibrium equation. So eliminating the row corresponding to q1 and the first column, and also eliminating the row corresponding to q3 and also the third column in the stiffness matrix, we obtain the equation as 10 to the power of 5 into 6.66 multiplied by q2 will be equal to f2 minus k23 a3. So what is the value of k23? K23 is nothing but the element in the global stiffness matrix corresponding to second column third row. So second column third row, the element is, if you observe here, it is minus 3.33. So 6.66 into 10 to the power of 5 q2, which is equal to f2 value is 60 kilonewtons, we'll take it as 60, minus K23 value is minus 3.33 into 0.12. 0.12 is equal to q3, which is the displacement at node 3, maximum displacement at node 3. So q2 value that we obtain is 0.15009 mm. Now the global nodal displacement vector is finally obtained to be 0.15009 and 0.12 mm. So 0 corresponds to the fixed node 1, the 0.15009 corresponds to node 2, 0.12 corresponds to the maximum displacement at node 3. With these known, we can calculate the support reaction. Support reaction is given by the same formula, R equals K into Q minus F, R1, R2, R3, 10 to the power of 5, 3.33 minus 3.33, 0, minus 3.33, 6.66, minus 3.33, 0, minus 3.33, 33, and you multiply this with the vector 0, 0.15009 and 0.12, minus 0, the load 60 kilonewtons, which is given by 60 into 10 to the power of 3, and then 0. So you will obtain the values to be R1 as minus 49.997 into 10 to the power of 3, R2 to be almost negligible or 0, R3 as minus 10.00019 into 10 to the power of 3. If you omit 10 to the power of 3 here in the force vector, you will obtain minus 49.997 and minus 10.00019. So this gives the solution for the support reaction and displacement by the elimination method. Now we'll see how the penalty approach method fares in comparison to elimination method with respect to the values that we obtain. So how do we proceed in penalty approach method? We'll first calculate the value of constant C, which corresponds to the maximum value of the element present in global stiffness matrix. So in the global stiffness matrix of this particular numerical problem, the maximum value is present at second column and second row, which is equal to 6.66. So we'll take 6.66 multiplied by 10 to the power of 5. Please don't forget this. 10 to the power of 5, we have kept it outside the bracket. That doesn't mean that it doesn't belong to the value of Kij. So we are not multiplied it inside the bracket, since it is common to all the elements in the matrix. So don't forget to multiply 10 to the power of 5. So 6.66 into 10 to the power of 5 multiplied by 10 to the power of 4, which is equal to 6.66 into 10 power 9. So once the value of C is obtained, the value of C is added to the known boundaries, the known boundary conditions of nodes K11 and K33, which corresponds to the stiffness at node 1 and node 3 exclusively. So adding 6.66 into 10 to the power of 9 will obtain 66603.33 at K11 location, 66603.33 at K33 location. We have done the multiplication in such a way that 6.66 into 10 to the power of 9, we have split it into 6.66 into 10 to the power of 4 into 10 to the power of 5, and 10 to the power of 5 we have taken it as common. So 6.66 into 10 to the power of 4 value is added to 3.33 and 3.33, okay, at locations K11 and K33 respectively. Also, the force vector will again change to the form F1 plus CA1. Since F2 there is no boundary condition known, F2 remains as it is, F3 plus C A3. So F1 plus CA, A1 and A3 will correspond to the displacements at node 1 and node 3. Displacement at node 1 is 0, displacement at node 3 is 0.12 mm. So the values substituted will yield the force vector as 0. The force at node 2 is 16 to 10 to the power of 3. F3 is 0, but CA3 is added. So it becomes 66603.33 into 10 to the power of 5 into 0.12, which will result in 799.96 into 10 to the power of 6. With the values known, we will formulate the equilibrium equation, which is K into Q equals F. K value, the modified global stiffness matrix, will be considered 66603.33 and 66603.33 at K11 and K33 location is the one which we consider. This particular matrix, this is the matrix that we consider for the equilibrium condition, and also the force vector will consider the vector with CA1 and CA3 added. So with this we will try to formulate, we will try to calculate the values of Q1, Q2 and Q3, and that will be equal to 7.50435512 into 10 to the power of minus 6 millimeters, 0.1500945 millimeter, and 0.12001504 millimeter. You may have a doubt now, since node 1 is fixed, how come it is having a value? If you observe, the value runs in terms of 10 to the power of minus 6. So it is very negligible, which can be considered as 0. So if you want to write it in the vector form, you can put it in the vector form where Q1, Q2, Q3 will take the values. Now Q being known, will calculate the reaction at supports. The formula is slightly different than what we have used for elimination method. The formula is given by R equals minus C into Qi minus Ai, where I denotes the node number. So we want to calculate the reaction force at node 1. So R1 will be equal to minus C into Q1 minus A1. So minus C value is 6.66 into 10 to the power of 9. Q1 value is, we have seen it is very negligible, but the value is now considered. If we had taken it to be equal to 0, since it is 10 to the power of minus 6, if I want to approximate it to 0, then the R1 value here will also yield 0, since 0 minus 0 multiplied by a term will be 0. So please retain whatever value that you obtained for Q1 or the displacement at fixed nodes as it is. Don't try to manipulate or change it or approximate it to the closest values. So multiplying this, R1 value will obtain it as 490 minus 499.79 Newton. If you want to, you can convert it into kilonewtons by 49.97. At support 2, R3 is, at support 3, which has the maximum displacement of 0.12, this is 3, so it is not 2. So R3 is given by minus C into Q3 minus A3. So minus 6.66 into 10 to the power of 9 multiplied by 0.12 0001504 minus 0.12 will give you R3 value as minus 10016.64 Newton, or if you want to convert it into kilonewtons, it will be minus 10.016 kilo Newton. So please go through the problem, solve it, and then if there are any clarifications that you need, you can always comment. It will be addressed. This completes today's session of numericals concerning analysis of bars with respect to varying cross section as well as one of the displacement having a freedom of displacement which is given. So this completes today's numericals. We'll take up further numericals in the next session. So please do like and share and subscribe. Thank you.